Live from our hurricane headquarters with real-time analysis from some of the nation's top meteorologists. This is Tracking the Tropics, powered by Bose Electric.
Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Tuesday. We've got breaking news out of the tropics. The official first tropical storm of the season has formed. It is Tropical Storm Andrea, and it is popping up a little bit further north than we normally see. Thank you for joining us here in the Streaming Center. I'm meteorologist Rebecca Barry. I want to bring in our expert panel here. We have one of our newest meteorologists here at WFLA, Juliana, and then we also have Joel Young joining us from our sister station, KARK, and you guys are the Arkansas Storm Team.
That's right. Yeah. Up here in Arkansas. And right now things have kind of calmed down. We've had a very active spring season with tornadoes, the most active since 2011. So I feel like this summer, even though we're dealing with the heat, I'm biting my tongue. I'm not complaining about it. As hot as it is, it means we catch a little bit of a break.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so you guys got a really, really rough tornado season, and no stranger to tornadoes. Juliana, your school kind of known for tornadoes.
Yes, I went to the University of Oklahoma. Did a little bit of storm chasing. I kind of kept my nose in the books, though, most of my time there. So, I do miss it in a way when, it's friendly storms. But this season has been very impressive, to say the least.
And we're rolling right into hurricane season, of course. And so I want to remind everyone that's watching, this is an interactive program and we want to talk to you guys. And so if you want to make a comment or ask a question, for us to be able to see your comment and bring it into the show here and use it, you have to use one of the hashtags. You can see them below our names on the screen. One of the hashtags is hashtag Hey Rebecca. You could also use hashtag Hey Juliana or hashtag Hey Joel. So any questions that you have about hurricanes, hurricane season in general, or any comments you have about this new tropical storm Andrea, go ahead and load those up. We'll be getting to your comments a little bit later on the show. But first of all, we want to know, what is the deal with Andrea? So I'm going to send it over to Juliana.
Thank you. Yes. So finally, our first named storm of the season. National Hurricane Center has kind of been, we're watching it for the last couple days now, and it just jumped up this morning to a high end chance of development. We got that closed area of circulation, strong enough 40-mile-per-hour winds. Now, luckily, not going to be a problem for the United States, really land in general, looking right now to be pretty short-lived at that, but actually fairly decent here. They're about 24 hours or so, 8 a.m. on Wednesday, tracking to the north and east, and really going to fizzle out there pretty soon as it encounters all different kinds of environments as it works its way farther to the north. And of course, one of the biggest things is the farther north it goes, the colder those waters get. So those are going to make this more and more unfavorable. But again, the key messaging here is that this is not a problem for the United States, not going to bring any impacts to us, which is what we like to see. So a big part of this is the Bermuda High helping to eject that area of low pressure to the north and east over the next day or so. And then it really falls apart heading into midday Wednesday or so. Those spaghetti models, you can see how they just end there through the forecast, and really looks like it's going to dodge land altogether. So what we call a fish storm. Now, part of that as well, something that we're constantly monitoring across the Atlantic Basin, is wind shear. Higher wind shear makes things less favorable for hurricanes, tropical storms, any form of a tropical system to stay organized. And so as this, you see that kind of pocket of red will kind of come and shred that system apart. Andrea at that, as we work our way through later today and into early tomorrow. And then that big batch of wind shear kind of comes pushing in from the north. Also, something to note here is that I don't want to say late to the game, but technically on average, we normally see our first named storm by June 20th. So it's about time. I know we don't want to be talking about named storms. We don't want hurricane season to be active if we can help it. But this is actually a list here of storms that we've seen before hurricane season starts. And we've had several seasons that started off early, and actually back to 2019, another Andrea not too long ago. And those are all those A names that we saw before season started. So point is, it's about time. Now, here's a look at that, quite literally.
I just wanted to interrupt you for just a
Go
second.
for it.
the other Andrea was the one that happened so early in January. Do you remember that weird little anomaly? They went back and said, oh, that was a subtropical storm, and then they added that name. So that's just a little fun fact. I feel like one Andrea was really early to the party, and this one's almost late.
Almost late.
So
yes, exactly. Exactly. It is pretty interesting how, you can look back at things in retrospect too, and name things earlier on. Now that this is kind of had mentioned this, I think last week, typically we see our first hurricane by August 11th. So that's kind of our next mile marker that we'll be keeping an eye out for. And for the meantime, though, this is all that we've got going on in the Atlantic Basin. Unless something's come out from the National Hurricane Center between the last 20 minutes or so, this is what we're talking about is Andrea. We can also bring in Joel here if you have anything else you want to add.
Yeah, Joel, were you feeling like it was kind of an eerily quiet start to this season?
I feel like we've gone so many seasons where we have seen earlier A storms in the month of May. We went, I think it was several years, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 7 years straight back in the 2010s where we had A named storms in the month of May before the official start of hurricane season. So I'm more hopeful that we're getting a taste of what is a little more normal, maybe a later start, but obviously here in the last few years, we have gotten, or in some years, we've had an A-named storm in May, and I'm just glad that it's a little later this year. Of course, as we kind of slip back into the La Nina later on in the season, it might start to act up, but hopeful that maybe it won't.
I'm hoping so either. And I'm just reminding our audience, you can always ask a question or make a comment for us. You do have to use one of the hashtags for us to be able to see it, though. Those hashtags are hashtag Hey Rebecca, hashtag Hey Juliana, or hashtag Hey Joel. And this is not the only thing out there right now, but it is kind of the only thing that's looking good, right, Juliana?
Exactly, yes. So something that's very normal is for tropical waves, just kind of these rough areas of storms and a little bit of low pressure that propagate from Africa all the way across the Atlantic Basin. And, they're just kind of what we call the wave train that are just sliding across towards the Caribbean. Nothing to be, worried about, primarily, especially because the Atlantic is still heating up. It's still getting there. Ocean heat content, this kind of vertical profile of the surface of the ocean, getting there. We're working on it, and especially in the main development region, that belt across, let's see. Well, actually, this is a cool thing that I know Rebecca brought in here. What we keep an eye out for, why past seasons have been so aggressive, is because of continually warming sea surface temperatures and warmer than average sea surface temperatures. And that is something that is expected, or really already what we're seeing across the Atlantic. So when you're roughly about a degree, once you start warming things up, so when you're a degree warmer than normal in the ocean, which this is just very impactful here. You could be upwards of 10 miles per hour faster with these tropical systems when it comes to their wind speeds. And so it doesn't take much. I think this really does a good job of emphasizing how important it is and how those small fluctuations make a big difference. And so if water temperatures are, for example, 4 degrees above average, then winds in a tropical system can be upwards of 30 miles per hour faster. So this is an overview right now of current sea surface temperatures and where we're at compared to the main belt that we're watching, which is essentially where those tropical waves exist right now. And, we're looking to that upper 80s, low 90s, some spots starting to get there. It's a little patchy in a way. And we're going to keep seeing this grow darker and darker throughout the season.
And I've noticed from the maps, Joel's neck of the wood, coastal Arkansas, already really hot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. The Gulf of Mexico is always a bathtub this time of year. So if anything gets in there, into that corner of the Gulf, of course, we're on high alert. And that was the case last year with, was it Beryl?
Yeah, Beryl.
Did we ever, I can't remember. I feel like everybody was interchanging the pronunciation of that one.
Yeah.
But we ended up being on the right side of that circulation when it came inland. And so we had a number of tornado warnings that day. And July 8th, if I'm not mistaken, which is very, uncommon that we have to deal with tornadoes in the summer months, especially late summer months, unless you get an incoming tropical system. And that was the case last year.
And early in the season, it is likely for us to get storms that spin up closer to land where it is warmer
Sure.
and in the Gulf. That's kind of typical. So this formation, and I keep calling it Andrea because we have a producer who's named, that's how she pronounces it, but it's technically
Sure.
Andrea. And so there are technical pronunciations on the National Hurricanes site, as we all learned in the ES years. But it's Andrea. And so where Andrea is formed is a little atypical. And so that's probably one of the reasons it's not very strong.
Exactly.
Right.
And I mean, you can even kind of get the idea where you see the farther north you go here in the Atlantic. I could probably try to zoom this out, but it gets substantially cooler in those. So it is kind of impressive that it organized, enough, like you said, that in such an awkward spot for tropical development.
It's funny, when I lived on the East Coast, we were a lot more worried about September. I was in North Florida, and that's when the Bermuda High would be kind of drifting northward, and it would kind of put us in. There were a couple of weeks there that if the perfect storm came along, the Bermuda High could sling it straight into Jacksonville. But since I moved to the West Coast of Florida here in Tampa, we worry a little bit more about August and October. Joel, what are your months?
Well, of course, August, September, but you said something earlier that reminded me of this season. Of course, every 6 years we get a new list of names. I don't know if y'all ever every year go through and look at the new names that appear and what they've replaced. Have y'all noticed what the D name this year has replaced?
Let's pull it up.
Dun, dun, dun.
Hello.
It's a Dexter, which is the first year we've had a Dexter.
Yes, and if you're a fan of the series, you're a little worried.
I'm not familiar.
It was Dorian back in 2019,
That's
which
right.
I know was such a headache for Florida because it was sort of it had everybody right on edge as it kind of sat there and
Yeah,
then it
sat
turned
there.
north and avoided Florida altogether. But
Yes, that was a wild storm for the Bahamas, especially, man.
yeah, can you imagine just being affected by a Category 5 for it's one thing when you get hit by a Category 5, it comes and goes.
But
It's
to just
terrible,
sit
but
there.
how long did it actually sit there? If I'm not mistaken, was it
15?
over 2 days? Was it?
I think
Was it
from,
8?
I think from tropical storm force winds entry to exit, it was probably 2 days, but I think the Category 5 conditions were like 18 or 19 hours.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I watched a documentary and it was like 19 hours of terror. So that's kind of where I'm going.
Yeah.
That's what
It's still.
odd.
Well, let's hope
19
Dexter
hours.
doesn't do anything like that,
No,
But
no.
yes, those August and September, just obviously those are awful
And
months.
since we're on names, there's a Rebecca and a Barry. Woohoo!
It is.
That is wild.
And it's funny because I've only had one tropical storm Rebecca in my career. I was on air. It was issued at 5 p.m. and I got so excited. I was like, I've been waiting my entire career to say this. Tropical storm Rebecca's formed, and it actually formed kind of where this storm Andrea is, and it went to the islands for the weekend. Didn't do much damage. It was very true to form.
Another name here that jumps out at me is Olga. And I know that is a name that I know no one in Florida would probably recognize, but back in 2019, it was a late season storm. It became a tropical storm. It made landfall in Louisiana, but there was a trough coming across that ingested Olga really quickly. And I think it got downgraded to a depression as it was moving in, but it kind of took on these post-tropical characteristics sort of as it got ingested in, and there was nothing left of it but the northern eye wall in a sense, and it became almost like a Boeing segment that quickly just moved due north. It was the craziest thing, probably one of the most bizarre meteorological things I've ever witnessed in my career, at least in my DMA, because I was in North Mississippi at the time, but there was a swath and it was quick moving. They ended up issuing some severe thunderstorm warnings along it just because it was high wind, but it wasn't even really a tropical system anymore. It was like falling apart, but yet the wind, it blew semis over on the Tennessee River Bridge in Western Tennessee. It ripped a wall off of a big building in downtown Tupelo, Mississippi. It was a very weird thing, but there for a little while they were issuing severe thunderstorm warnings, and then they were like, wait a minute, this isn't a severe thunderstorm because the thunderstorms aren't driving the wind. The wind is driving the rain, and it's not a lot of thunder with it. And so they issued high wind warnings ahead of it instead. So it was just a really strange, if you want to go back and look it up, it was 2019, Olga, but that name, there it is again.
Sticking with you. It's
Yeah.
always interesting to see the ones that they do retire versus ones they don't retire. With that much damage,
Sure.
you would have thought they might have considered retiring Olga, but then they have to come
Maybe.
out.
I mean, and not many people were affected by it. So that, in their defense, there was but it was a bizarre storm that I personally won't forget because I covered it, but it was a wild system.
Speaking of unforgettable storms, Juliana has quite the story.
Oh, yes. Hurricane Ian. That was my first hurricane, period, let alone covering hurricanes. And I had just graduated from the University of Oklahoma, May of 22, and that rolled around September of 22. And I had just started my first on-air full-time gig, and so I was tag teaming with my chief the night before landfall. They took it easy on me. I was a rookie, so I was not covering landfall day. That was, an experience to say the least. If you guys are familiar with Wink News, our station actually, we're located within a creek that comes off of the Caloosahatchee River there. Sure. And our station flooded. We ended up, camping up on the second floor, evacuating to the second floor, and then getting evacuated by military grade vehicles at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning from the building. It was the most surreal experience. So we were quite literally going through exactly what all of our viewers were going through. Exactly. A storm I cannot ever forget.
For all of you who do work in those tropical markets right on the coast, it's stressful enough for you to have to cover these storms yourselves, but then you're also having to deal with the contingency plans of what happens if my home floods, or how do I get to work? All of those things that, maybe here we have to deal with in winter storms. We have to think about how do we get to and from work, but you're dealing with the stress of covering the storm. And then you're also having to deal with the stress of making sure your family is safe, your property is safe, all at the same time. So I think about y'all every hurricane season. Yes, no kidding.
We're always worried about you guys during tornado season. And I know that if you tuned in last week, you might have heard that we were planning on discussing Google AI's the Google AI hurricane model that just came out. We decided since Andrea had just formed, we're going to push that to next week. But right now, what we want to get around to is the most exciting part of the show, which is taking your comments. And so if you use one of the hashtags, #HeyRebecca, #HeyJuliana, or #HeyJoel, commenting on our social media feeds, we are going to be able to pull those in and put them on screen and talk about your comments, talk about your questions, and let's go ahead and start that right now with our Tracking the Tropics Q&A.
Ooh.
So fancy. So using a hashtag to ask a question. Oh, this is a good one. This is from Brandy Hatton. #HeyRebecca. Ironic to me, it was the ship, the Andrea Gale, that sank when a hurricane met a northeaster near that region. Thanks to their story, we have the stellar movie, The Perfect Storm. Thanks for reading my useless factoid. That was not a useless factoid. That was a really, really cool factoid. And so we, of course, had the first tropical storm of the season, Andrea. And she pointed out the same name as that ship. Did you guys see The Perfect Storm?
I don't think I have.
Been years.
Yeah.
It's been a really long time. I wouldn't remember the name of the ship.
Well, I think that maybe the one reason I remember is my husband and I were traveling up the East Coast, and we stopped in that Gloucester and did the whole have a swordfish sandwich and saw the statue, and that whole town's history is really steeped in the fishing community, and that was kind of cool. My husband's a fishing captain, so that was kind of right in his lane. So that's probably the reason that I remember it. But thank you so much, Brandy, for that cool comment. And so we've got another one. This one is from Carol Greenfield. #HeyRebecca, and you do have to use those hashtags for us to be able to pull the questions in like this. Any chance this storm could turn around and hit the U.S.? I'm going to send that one over to Juliana. Could this turn?
Yeah, I'm going to bring back this graphic. No, the answer is no. We have so many things that are
smiling.
No, it is not coming to the United States. It will not turn around. Tracking the area of high pressure. So the Bermuda High can be our friend. It can be our foe. But right now, it is because of the positioning of the storm that the wind flow is going to sweep it away. And this is a consistent thing. This is how the wind flows from west to east across the globe because of Earth's circulation, the way Earth spins on its axis. And so that is the good news in this regard. There's no opportunity for such thing in at least this specific scenario with Andrea. So that is I get to be the bearer of good news in that sense.
We love good news like that. And we're going to toss this one towards Joel. It's hashtag Hey Rebecca. I saw some comments that seem to be confused about the naming of the hurricanes because of Alberto. Could you break down why the two oceans have two sets of names?
Well, of course, to remove any confusion for any storms. But if you'll notice, too, whenever you have the two sets of names, the A name in the Pacific, if it's a male name, in the Atlantic, it'll be a female name. And so you'll notice, like in this case, you've got the Atlantic side, female, male, female, male, female. I believe they're still doing, and of course, some of these are interchangeable, but neutral, right? But that is kind of how it's been going for years. Is they rotate, so they both have a list of six lists of names that they rotate every year. But if the Atlantic starts with a female name, then the Pacific will start with a male name, and then vice versa every year.
All right. So this is your last call for your comments and questions using those hashtags, hashtag Hey Rebecca, hashtag Hey Juliana, or hashtag Hey Joel. And I want to give a moment to Joel. What are your thoughts on this hurricane season?
Well, I'm thankful that, of course, that it has taken this long to get started. A little anxious about it getting a little more active later on in the season as we kind of slip back, because right now we're sort of in a neutral La Nina, El Nino. But as we kind of get into the late season, maybe it starts to shift into more La Nina, and then it could become a little more active. Obviously, as you can see there, the tropical activity typically starts to ramp up as we get into late July, into August, and then especially peaks into mid-September. So that's the time of year we're going to be watching. But of course, it only takes one storm. You can have an active season and all those storms be out at sea. And, perception for those of us on land, if there are, if there's very little impact to land, then it's perceived as a inactive year. But you can still have a hurricane season forecast verify an active season and it not affect land. So I'm hopeful that that's the case. Of course, I say that every year, and we've been proven that sometimes we have landfalling hurricanes. Helene was a terrible example, and of course Milton as well. I know y'all were affected by that, but I'm just hopeful that maybe we can keep everything way out at sea this year. Anything that comes close to land weakens, but anything that gets in the Gulf, of course, gives us lots of anxiety when you get into a closed body of water, and things can blow up really quickly with the warmer sea surface temperatures.
Yeah, we're hoping for a quieter season, especially for the Bay Area. And if you joined us a little bit late, I want to close out with a quick recap from Juliana of the first named storm of the season.
Yes. So Andrea, our first named storm, 40-mile-per-hour winds, a quickie system. This is a fish storm by all definitions. Right now, kind of just located, I want to say several hundred miles, if not right now, probably 1,000 miles to the northeast of Bermuda. This is going to keep tracking to the northeast. No, this will not be turning around and hitting the United States. No impacts to the United States likely. And as of right now, with that forecast cone, no impacts to land, period. As it works its way to the northeast, going to keep weakening slowly but surely here as we work our way towards about tomorrow morning. And then we're moving on. We're going to be looking to Barry whenever Barry wants to arrive. Right now, the rest of the Atlantic still kind of quiet at the moment. And, of course, naturally, the more we work our way through the rest of the season, it's not going to stay the case. So always be sure to stay tuned in for updates. But as of right now, this is all we've got going on in the Atlantic Basin.
All right. And we're going to start closing out our quieter Tracking the Tropics episodes with my favorite question, because I saw it on TikTok and I always get a fun answer. What's your craziest hurricane hack when the storm's bearing down? What's one thing you do that's we're not talking about filling your bathtub with water. We're talking like, oh no, I'm going to be comfortable for this storm. Here's my battery powered coffee maker. What you got, Joel?
Oh, well, wait. So repeat the question again, because I haven't been on TikTok in a minute. So,
so the TikTok trend is like, what's your diabolical hack? And so they did it for traveling. They did it for other things. But the most interesting one that you should hop on TikTok and look at is, what's your craziest hurricane hack? Like, what's the 20-year Floridian doing? And the funniest ones were with coffee. Some people freeze their coffee and then thaw it out days later. Everyone has different ways to get coffee.
I was, and I only worked in South Mississippi for a couple of years. My husband is originally from South Mississippi, and one thing that they did was they would take their electronics and put it inside their dishwasher and close it up, because if anything, if it floods, your dishwasher should be watertight. So as long as you don't run your dishwasher, obviously you don't start your dishwasher with all of your laptops and stuff. But I've seen people like put their laptops down in where you put the dishes, so that is a hurricane hack that I've heard of.
That's funny to
there
picture.
from my friends in South. Yeah.
Yeah. I worry about the septic backup, like what when the water systems fail, but maybe it'll be okay.
Yeah. That's true.
Funny,
That's a
but
good
I
point.
do like that one. I really like that one as well. Well, we are going to have a Hurricane Hacks episode sometime this summer when things are quiet, and we're going to share all the crazy ones we've come up with. So we will include that one too. Thank you, Joel.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
And thank you so much for joining us and taking your time out of the day to join us here on Tracking the Tropics. It's every Tuesday at 12:30. We're talking about what's going on in the tropics, and when it's quiet, we get even nerdier because we don't have anything to talk about out there. We are diving deep into the science. So if it stays quiet and we don't have anything else to talk about next week, we're talking about this new hurricane model that Google gave us. It's an AI hurricane model. So how good is it? How good could it be? How good could it get? And is this the future of forecasting? So that's what we'll be talking about next week. Thank you so much, Juliana, for bringing us all the knowledge and the graphics. You'll be here with us next week as well. And from the Stream Center, I am going to close things out and wish you guys a happy, healthy hurricane season. We will be live if anything pops up or forms, and we're always here on Tuesdays at 12:30. Thanks so much.
Find Tracking the Tropics on these platforms. And for storm updates, the latest models, and helpful resources, visit trackingthetropics.tv.